stories. Before I get started today, I just want to say to all the haters, y'all keep on hating, because the more y'all hate, the more money I make. Y'all be hating on me and my money keep piling up, and I don't give a about your opinion. Keep hating, keep talking that trash, keep saying that I'm the worst that you've ever heard, because I really don't care. See, I ain't like the rest of these because while y'all sitting there saying that I suck, I be working all the time. I be doing this shit 5 days a week. While everybody else be on Twitter talking about, oh, I'm sore, oh, I'm sick, oh, I'm depressed. Yeah, well, I'm depressed, I'm sick, and I'm sore too, but I post every fucking day. So keep hating. Go listen to them other bitch-ass narrators, because I don't give a I cannot be nice, and I won't be nice. Y'all want to come at me with some shit like that? I'll come back at you too. I'll block your ass, and I don't give a Coffinbrood 2021. Enjoy the show. Scary stories. So this story is about a friend that I used to have. We'll call him Ken. Ken and I were friends for like 10 years. I used to call Ken and he'd listen to my problems and he'd give me advice. And when I was upset, I would cry on his shoulder and he'd comfort me. Ken gave me a place to stay when my parents kicked me out. Ken helped me get my driver's license and even helped me get into college. Ken helped me with my addiction. Then Ken lost his job and he called me and wanted my help. And I was like, sorry, dude, I can't help you. I was just too busy with my career and everything else going on. Ken found a job and asked me out to dinner and told me he had always had feelings for me, and I found it so gross. He pretended to be my friend and only helped me because he thought he could get the goods. I find it absolutely disgusting the length some men will go to try and get with a woman. Ken, I appreciate the help you gave me, but I don't owe you anything. How dare you try to cross the line between friend and lover? It makes me feel gross knowing that Ken was probably thinking about me the whole time I lived with him. He was just waiting for a vulnerable moment that he could manipulate me into a relationship with him. Just because you gave me a place to live when I was homeless, you fed me when I was hungry, and you helped me get off of the drugs and protected me when I was in danger, doesn't mean I have to return the kindness. I don't have to be there for you. I understand that we were friends, but I moved on and made new friends. I don't like the fact that you called so much and texted so much. Once a week is just fine. You don't need to know how I'm doing all the time. I tried to file a restraining order against Ken and the police just looked at me like I was stupid. Ken is stalking me. I'm tired of him wanting to know how I'm doing, and I'm tired of him asking if he did something wrong. Of course you did something wrong. You asked a friend out to dinner, and you fantasized about wanting to be with me, like you didn't know we were just friends. Once a month is more than enough for a healthy friendship. How dare you suggest that we spend more time together? I find it repulsive that you'd even suggest such a thing. I understand that I spend more time with other people and you feel jealous, but I have to spend that time with those other people, and you don't need to know if I am okay all the time. If I wanted you to know how I was doing or where I was, I'd let you know. So Ken, stop asking about me and get a life, dude. And also, Ken, how dare your sister say that I'm an ungrateful bitch? Just because I don't talk to you anymore. We just aren't compatible, and how dare you suggest that I pay you back or that you expect me to give you a place to stay like you don't know other people. I would have been just fine without your so-called help. I now know not to trust a man that offers me so much help. I don't allow myself to get close to people like you anymore. You should have been upfront from the beginning. No one just develops feelings like that over time. It's sickening, and I won't have it in my life. How dare you send me an invitation to your wedding? You were only doing this to hurt me. And how dare you tell me how well you are doing in your career? You're only doing that to make me feel bad about not reciprocating your feelings towards me. You hurt my feelings with your invitation. That girl you were marrying probably put you up to it because she wants to get back at me because you imagined that I hurt you in some way. But you hurt me. You violated my trust when you revealed that you liked me as more than a friend. I was like a sister to you, and you should have known that. I will not go to your wedding, and I don't owe you a fucking thing. Get off of my Facebook and stop sending me friend requests and stop trying to be a part of my life. I had just broken up with my girlfriend and I was just on Facebook talking to friends and trying to meet new people. One night I saw a cute, somewhat nerdy girl and I decided to send her a friend request and she accepted my friend request. I sent her a message. I simply sent her, "Hi." Not "Hi, how are you?" Not "Hi, my name is Jimmy." I just simply sent her a "Hi." And this girl replies with a gigantic wall of text. "Hi, how are you? Have we met before? If not, it's nice to meet you, blah blah blah." I don't remember everything that she said. It seemed a bit strange, and I should have taken it as a sign that she was fucking insane, or she did it deliberately as a joke or a way to get me to back off. But I took the bait and decided to reply back to her. "I'm not sure. I know a lot of people in this town. I may have met you through a friend and I don't remember." Somehow, she knew this was a lie, but she didn't know that she hadn't met me? I really became suspicious of this girl, but continued talking to her. I asked her out to dinner and she said yes, and then she disappeared for a week or two, and I was left on pause wondering what the fuck. Suddenly, out of the blue, she changes her privacy settings to where no one knows when she's online or anything. So I got tired of dealing with her bullshit, and I ignored her for 6 months. And then suddenly, she sends me some rambling nonsense about how she had to change her settings because guys were sending her pictures of their dicks and fuckboys were harassing her. And I was just kind of like, yeah, okay, sure, do you want to go out sometime? Then she said yes. Then she tried to backtrack and make a bunch of fucking excuses. I finally got her to come out, and it was utterly disastrous. The first night I had gotten her to come out was at around 2 a.m. in the fucking morning, and it was storming. See, normally, if I'm picking up a chick at 2 a.m., I figure it's a booty call, but this girl didn't seem to think anything of it. I could tell she was off. I picked her up again, and we went to the park, and we talked about boundaries and other shit. She sat right there and told me she wouldn't mind if I did this and that. Oh, you're probably wondering what I mean by this and that. I mean, I sat right there and I asked her about hugging, touching, oral sex, and all kinds of shit, and she acted like she was down for anything, only to find out she was completely and utterly full of shit. I took her to my friend's house and got her high and got her drunk and bought her dinner, and I was really enjoying her company and thought she was amazing. And then my friend bans her from the house. Apparently she went and told my friend's girlfriend that I was creepy and rapey and I was a fucking bum. She said I was a fucking bum. This 26-year-old lazy, manipulative trailer trash bitch who has no fucking job, lives with her parents, has no sense of fucking style, no fucking social skills, and seemingly no goddamn conscience at all, and is a lying-ass, misleading fucking cunt, had the audacity to tell my friend's girlfriend that I'm a fucking bum? I have a fucking career. I have money in the bank. I own my own car. And I have designer clothes. I'm not bragging. Honestly, I'm just making a fucking point. This lazy, manipulative piece of fucking trash has the audacity to call me a fucking bum when I have more than she'll probably ever have and I would have given her the world? She led me on by coming off as either crazy as fuck or overly interested, and I knew it was probably a waste of time or too good to be true. I later find out that she's addicted to sleeping pills or some kind of shit. I was stupid enough to give this junkie bitch money. I was stupid enough to let her use me for free dinners and all kinds of other shit. But the moment I start wanting to date her, she all of a sudden starts distancing herself from me. She all of a sudden has a bunch of other guys craving her attention. She went from a shy, nerdy gamer girl to becoming a full-blown gold-digging bitch with cucks willing to put up with her bullshit just because I was the first man to tell her off and tell her how much of a piece of fucking shit she is. None of it makes any sense to me. This bitch sucked my dick for marijuana and sucked my dick numerous times, then tells me that she doesn't want to fuck me and doesn't want to date me, but yet she was gagging and choking on my dick for over a fucking hour, and I never forced her to do anything she did not want to do. She willingly did it all, and now she's a lesbian? Bitch, please. I invited her to have Thanksgiving dinner with me and my friends, and she ignored me until after Thanksgiving. Every time I stopped talking to her, she jumps on Facebook for literally a minute and writes some long rambling shit, then jumps off for days, sometimes weeks, and ignores my replies until I delete them because I get sick of waiting for her and she never asks what I said. I've cussed her out multiple times and it's gotten me nowhere. She's messaged me in the middle of the fucking night to ask me stupid questions like, "Was that you parked in the yard?" And I'd be at work. She told me that it was perfectly fine for me to go to her house anytime, and then she has a fucking fit when I do. She tells me that she's not smoking meth or smoking crack, but yet every behavioral pattern she has displayed indicates to me that she is in fact smoking crack or meth. She never leaves the house. She's always tired. She talks to herself. She has these weird obsessions that make no sense. She is paranoid, and she apparently likes to get into trouble. She can't hold a conversation to save her life, and she is shady as fuck. Today, you are about to enter into the mind of a paranoid delusional schizophrenic. I don't know when I became a paranoid delusional schizophrenic or what triggered it in the first place. I don't know if I was born with it or if it developed over time or if it happened as a part of some trauma that occurred in my life, but I will try to remember as far back as I can. As far back as I remember, my life was always pretty terrible. My parents were alcoholics. My brother was a drug addict. He started smoking crack at around the age of 23 years old. If I remember correctly, I was always treated like I was mentally retarded. I kinda accepted this answer and just let it ride its course until I decided I no longer wanted to be viewed in that light. In middle school, I was bullied so bad that I became violent and even retaliated and beat the hell out of some of my bullies or people that I assumed were bullies. I used to go to school all the time and I had good grades all the way up until about 8th grade, whenever I really stopped giving a fuck about school altogether. My parents got divorced and it came as a shock to me. I was told that no one would ever love me and that I'd never be happy in life. And here I am now at the age of 34 years old and I'm completely and utterly fucking miserable. I idolized Marilyn Manson and the Columbine shooting. I often dreamt of wanting to do the same thing to my school, but I never had the balls or my mental state wasn't as damaged. I got into Satanism and black magic and even believed the nightmares I started having were real. I felt like I was possessed by evil spirits. I had disturbing thoughts I could not get out of my head, and I even lost friends because I was just too creepy and dark to be around. I tried playing it off as being into the goth lifestyle, and that no one should take it too seriously. I remember the first time I smoked crystal meth. It was sometime after I'd broken up with about the only girl that I'd ever truly loved, and many people still think I'm insane to this day. This first and only girl that I ever loved was Kayla, and even to this day, even though I hate her more than anything, and had horrific, demonic dreams about her after breaking up with her years later, she was the only one. I remember I had told my friend Kelly, and she burst into tears. Kelly was someone that was there for me when no one else was after I'd broken up with Kayla. I never understood exactly what the fuck Kelly wanted from me, or if she wanted anything at all from me. I never felt like I was worth anyone's time, but Kayla, I felt like she truly liked me for me, because she obviously knew I was poor, and that I was trash, and yet she stayed in my life for a while. She may have been leading me on, and sadly with her, I don't really care if she were only leading me on to hurt me later. I feel grateful that I even got to feel her lips and her embrace. Years later, I would talk about murdering people in a casual way, and some people would entertain me and listen or join in on it. I started listening to black metal, and I thought it was the best thing in the world, and I idolized many of the musicians in the scene. The crazier they were, the more I idolized them, to the point of pure obsession. I would listen to black metal in my room in the winter and sit in my room and freeze. I seemed to enjoy the bitter cold and the music blasting. I dated several other girls after Kayla, and it felt nice knowing that she wasn't the only one. And yet, every one that I dated broke up with me for reasons that made no fucking sense. I continued to watch my friend group get smaller and smaller, and more people started hating me. And then I got jumped, and my reputation went straight to hell. And I became reclusive and stopped having respect for most people, and most people stopped having respect for me. I was used and made fun of for reasons I don't understand. I was treated like absolute shit. I finally gave up on dating and stopped trying to have friends or even know anyone. I suffered in silence and misery for many years. I felt like I was cursed. I really felt like something had taken over my life and just came and ruined everything in my life. Here I was, the best looking person in my entire friend group, the most charismatic, the most desirable, and I was failing at everything in the dating world. It made no fucking sense, and still doesn't. I decided to go out one night and get cigarettes or something, and I met this girl working at the gas station, and she seemed overly interested in me, and I found it strange. We started hanging out, and then we got together, and we were together for a while, and then she all of a sudden decides that she doesn't want to be with me, and she leaves me, and none of it makes any sense at all. I remember sleeping with her and waking up in the middle of the night and having anxiety over her leaving me. And she promises me that she'll never leave me. Then she leaves me 2 years later, just as I had feared she would. I then start talking to a friend that I dated a few times and that I was supposed to hook up with the night that I got with the girl from the gas station, and she gets naked on camera and says a bunch of shit. Then she gets mad at me and stops talking to me and blocks me. Yeah, that makes perfect fucking sense. About 1.5 years later, some other random shit that makes no goddamn sense happens, and 1 week, my life and my mental health utterly devolved, and the entire world changed around me. I often feel like none of this can possibly be real. I never really had any friends to begin with, as it turns out. It started with someone that I vaguely remember from high school. I tried talking to her and she pretended to be too busy. She wouldn't answer her messages. Then another girl I'd been talking to for a while, I got tired of chasing. I got tired of trying to be friends with some neckbeard I thought was my friend for a long time. I started using drugs. Then all of the drug addicts all of a sudden stopped and claimed they don't want to do it all the time. My neighborhood became really quiet for seemingly no reason. For some reason, the people that were living at my friend's house up and moved out, like they mysteriously found all this fucking money to up and leave. People on Facebook all of a sudden turned on me. I kept getting replies like, "You're too depressing to talk to." There was just too much drama around there. Or I'd blatantly get ignored by people that were supposedly my friend in the past. I would talk to some friends and tell them about all of the horrible things I have to deal with, and their most helpful advice is, "Fuck them if they don't have time for you," which seems to be an admission of how they actually feel about me. I hear about these so-called stories of how people get off of the drugs and then they magically become successful. But anytime I come off of the drugs, I realize how lonely and miserable I am. Someone else starts using drugs and they become popular. They get off of the drugs and they're still popular. I get on the drugs and I'm a loser. And when I stop using drugs, I'm the police. Every so-called friend that I ever had has hurt me in some way. And yet, they still all get along with each other because they all have this secret hatred for me. I read on Facebook about how real everyone is. Yeah, y'all motherfuckers are so real. Real fake. Fake as fuck. Lying ass, shady motherfuckers. There seems to be this group conscience that everyone has to move as far away from me as humanly possible. My family hates me and mocks me and wants nothing to do with me. My so-called friends think I'm stupid as fuck and they hate me. Somehow, my friends expected more from me. They expected me to rise from the slums to become a rich and successful person. Yeah, they knew I didn't have the same advantages as they did. They judged me for hanging out with the one person I did hang out with, but they were too busy hanging out with their cool friends. While I was strung out because last I heard they were also strung out, they all of a sudden found Jesus or decided to clean up their act. They went from supposedly loving my straightforwardness to acting like everything I say or do is wrong. All of my relationships were ruined, and no one had a single bit of sympathy for anything that was happening in my life. I lived literally one house down from the house that all of my friends would always hang out at, and yet they never invited me to hang out with them. And they pretend like I was the one that was being stuck up. They would give me their phone number, and then they'd ignore my phone calls, my texts, and they would randomly change their number and then disappear for 6 or 7 months and act like they did nothing wrong. They would lure me into a conversation and bring up memories they knew were painful for me just to trigger me, and then, when I say shit, they would fucking share it amongst themselves and secretly laugh at me or criticize me and make me look like the bad guy. I feel unwelcome and unwanted in the presence of some people, and the moment I said I didn't feel welcome and I felt like no one wanted me around, I'd be told it was all in my head. I said my mental health and my entire life devolved in 1 week because in 1 week so much shit happened. In 1 week I was left on red by all of my so-called friends. My phone calls were ignored, my texts were ignored, I was made fun of, I was lied to, I was manipulated, I was told to fuck off. All of this happened before in the past, but nothing was as bad as it is now. I've never had everyone all at once do this to me. The best advice I get from anyone is, don't fuck up your life. My life was already a fucking disaster, Sean. And I already had nothing, and already had lost everything before I ever even got on the shit. I was off of the shit for several years, and everyone else was magically on it, and the moment I decided to try and use it as a bonding thing, to try and be friends with someone, they all of a sudden are doing better, and are better than me, and have a better life. I decided to leave Facebook and leave all social media. I have no friends, and don't understand how anything works. I don't give a fuck that some bitch likes Pepsi, or that some other asshole posts a bunch of shitty memes. Everyone wants to claim it's because we are older now and that things are different now. But as far as I can see, things are the same as they have always been. Facebook is a toxic cesspool of liars and fake friends. Facebook wants to be your phone. No one gives out their phone number anymore, but gets hysterical whenever you call them on Messenger. They won't answer a text message sent through SMS, and they barely answer a message sent through Facebook Messenger. Facebook's motto is connecting people. But since the creation of Facebook, I have felt a disconnect with everyone that claimed they were my friend. I've gotten into more shit with people from Facebook than I ever did with people through MySpace or the phone. Before Facebook, I knew who my enemies were and who was really there for me. I knew when someone was being truthful and honest with me. Now I can't tell who is trying to use me and who isn't. You may think this isn't very scary, but picture this. You know someone for over 10 years, and then you go to their house and you do everything to help them, and they betray you and put your life in danger, and everyone acts like it's no big deal and acts like you should have known better than to trust that person. How the fuck was I supposed to know that this person was a scumbag when everyone keeps secrets from me and doesn't bother to warn me? How was I supposed to know that I was putting my life in danger, or you supposedly haven't talked to this person in years because of something they did? You never told me about it. You never said, do you remember his or her name? Yeah, you should stay away from them for this reason. No, you never did anything because you, like the person that betrayed me, was never there and disappeared and held all of your secrets because you did not care. I once met up with an old friend of mine, a friend that I had known for a few years prior to the meetup in November of 2017. I had actually met this person on a dating site. However, as time went on, the relationship between us became strictly platonic. There were no red flags, but my gut did not warn me, so I completely trusted this person. We met up in town, behind a bus station, on a grassy hill surrounded by trees and a tall wall. Our meeting was just to have a smoke, get a little high, and to have some small catch-up. This meetup was fine. I had actually started smoking weed a few months before, so I was still relatively new to it. He had brought something new for me to try, purple haze. I wasn't all that anxious about trying it, as I completely trusted this person and would never believe that he would lie to me. He had packed a full blunt for me, but I only managed to smoke a quarter of the blunt. We spoke during this time about work, our previous relationships, and random stuff. About half an hour later, I started to feel extremely lightheaded and anxious. I suddenly had this strange feeling where I did not feel comfortable at all, and I really wanted to go home. When I asked if I could go home, he offered to take me home. But I said, no, it's okay. He offered again, please let me take you home. You'll be safe with me. I would not hurt you. I shook my head and said, no thank you. I can take myself home. When I started to walk away, I felt like I was walking on a cloud. My head became dizzy, and my eyesight was a little blurry. I had never felt this way before, and in time I started to panic. When we made our way down the hill toward the bus station, I was relieved as there were a lot of people around, so if anything happened, someone would step in. I became extremely terrified of him. I had this horrible feeling in my gut that he told me to get away from him when I got into the bus station. I told him I would call my taxi here and go home. His tone was no longer nice, but very stern. I'm going to take you home. And he began to pull at my jacket. I told him no, and that I was going home on my own. He pulled my jacket harder, and I fell against him. He pulled me into him and told me I didn't need to be scared of him. But I was so terrified at this point. I started to feel very paranoid, and I couldn't see properly. I pushed him away from me and rubbed my eyes and called for a taxi.
He tried to pull my phone from me and yelled in my face, "Do you ever listen? I'm taking you home." I noticed a few people had stopped and asked if I was okay. All I remember was that I wanted to go home, so a lady kindly called a taxi for me and waited with me, made sure I was okay, and helped me into the taxi. During the time when I waited for the taxi, he kept trying to get me to come home in his car with him. But the lady looked after me, told him to go home, and that she was going to take me home instead. So he left. I got home. I gave the taxi driver money and told him to keep the change. I didn't want to wait around. I just wanted to get into my bed, because at the time, it was the only place I would feel and be safe from harm. That evening, I laid in my bed for 5 hours straight, staring at the ceiling. I don't remember if I thought about anything, or if my mom came in at any time. I just remember laying in bed, doing nothing until the paranoia and the sickly feeling began to wear off. I remember looking at my phone and seeing I had 32 missed calls from him, 10 voicemails left, and 50 plus text messages. The messages were weird. He had sent around 20 messages just asking where I was and when I got home, and in one of the voicemails, he had told me about how he had this fantasy of taking me home whilst drugged up and tying me up. He wanted to blindfold me and he wanted me to submit to him. I freaked out and blocked him on all of my social media, Instagram, Snapchat, Discord, and I blocked his number. Before the blocking, I told him if he ever contacted me again, then I would call the police. I heard nothing from him for a month, until I realized a text from an unknown number asking me how I was. I hadn't given my number to anyone, so I ignored it. I then received another message a few minutes later saying that they missed me and that they would love to see me soon. I asked who they were. No reply. Nothing. So creepy person who pretended to be my friend. Let's never meet again. I apologize if this gets lengthy. There's a lot to unpack here. This happened to one of my best friends and I back in 2017. I feel like it's worth sharing. Some backstory. My best friend, Elise, was dating this guy, Mark, in 2016. They broke up right after New Year's was approaching. I've known Elise for over a decade, but we didn't talk much while they were together. I ran into them once at a local coffee shop, hugged her, and was chatting away while Mark stared at me in disgust, as if Elise wasn't allowed to talk to her friends at the time. I thought nothing of it, assuming he was just antisocial. I had no idea he would go on to ruin an entire year of my life. It's really fuzzy as to how Mark got into contact with me specifically. I believe Elise posted about her breakup, and I offered my support publicly, so he targeted me. It began on New Year's Eve. He started messaging me on Instagram over and over, threatening me. I was having a get-together with my then-boyfriend, two of my now ex-best friends, and my now ex-best friend's boyfriend. I remember seeing my notifications blowing up and ignoring it. Everyone else seemed more concerned than I was. I brushed it off until late that next day. I checked my phone and I had dozens of DMs from Mark, as well as a few public posts that he had tagged Elise and I in, calling us every name in the book and claiming I was the reason they broke up. I answered his DMs asking why he was targeting me. That was the biggest mistake I had ever made. After some angry messages from him, he blocked me, and I thought it was over. I also had several missed calls from Elise, so I finally contacted her and asked what was going on. She frantically told me that Mark was a dangerous man, and that he's been tormenting her since the day they became a couple. He would throw her around in his apartment, leaving awful bruises that she sent me photos of. He would threaten to commit suicide if she left him, and he even threw a hissy fit at a tattoo shop because they wouldn't tattoo Elise's first and middle name over his eyebrow. He got Crybaby instead, fitting. Elise also informed me that Mark had gone to jail before meeting her for domestic abuse. He stabbed his ex-girlfriend in the leg and was only behind bars for a month before his dad bailed him out. With this new information, I was terrified. Elise told me where he lived, and it was directly behind the coffee shop I mentioned earlier. I frequented that building and that part of town in general. That'll come into play later. I eventually calmed myself down and forgot about him until he got my phone number. I still don't know how he got it, but I woke up to 30 plus messages from him one day and was horrified. His messages included threats to kill himself if I didn't help him and Elise get back together, threats to kill me, cries for help, him blocking my number and then unblocking it just to start the cycle all over again. I, being very naive and not wanting to be held responsible if he actually killed himself, did not block him. I asked him to leave me alone and if he wanted a number to a hotline where he could get some help, and he pretended to calm down for a bit. I gave him the number after many messages from him saying how much he missed Elise but also wanted to kill her. I told her immediately and pushed her to go to the police. She did not. He conditioned her to believe that she would get in trouble if she reported him. This went on for months. I usually didn't respond, and when I did, he seemed to chill out for a bit. I'm skipping ahead to a particular night where Elise and I were hanging out at my house, where we were chatting away. When my phone started to light up, I ignored it and kept talking because I didn't want to be rude. Elise peeked at my phone and said, "It's Mark, look." Sure enough, Mark was bombing my phone with threats to slit his own throat because he knew Elise was at my house, calling us both cunts and claiming it would be our fault if he died that night. I did not answer, but what came next is something that still haunts me to this day. He sent a video. Being curious, I clicked on it. Elise watching over my shoulder. The video was of Mark's arm, a huge gash going down the middle. He was fake crying in the background, saying, "You made me do this. I fucking hate you both." He clenched his fist over and over again to make more blood gush out. Elise and I were in such shock that we watched the entire 50-second clip, despite how disturbing it was. I immediately called my local police station. Elise gave them his address, and an officer came to my house to view the video and take down some notes. While we waited for the police to arrive, Mark posted the gruesome video to his Instagram and unblocked Elise and I just to tag us in it, claiming that we told him to do it. Being a conversational, attractive guy with an e-boy aesthetic, the girls that swooned over him commented some pretty harsh things about us and kissed his ass like crazy. He was admitted to the hospital that night, and I wish they kept him. The harassment continued the second he got out. Time traveling a little more now to a few months later. Mark hadn't let up, and Elise and I were still very close. We had a friend, Kayla, visiting from across the country. She also had a run-in online with Mark and hated him, but wasn't afraid of him. She was always carrying more than one weapon, some pepper spray, and she knew how to fight. So she suggested we go take a walk in the part of town he lived in. She wanted to visit that coffee shop, see some of our small businesses, and then grab dinner at a pizzeria. Elise and I reluctantly agreed. We parked in front of the coffee shop, grabbed some drinks, and started walking down the road. Within about 5 minutes, Mark drove by on one of his motorcycles. Elise and Kayla were immersed in conversation as I trailed behind. I looked up and made eye contact with Mark. Elise and Kayla noticed him as well as he was speeding off. Kayla assured us he wouldn't get anywhere near us with her around, so we kept walking. Mark began cycling the block we were walking on with his bike. As we crossed to the next block, He switched to that block and circled it too. On the third block was the pizzeria place. Their walls are all glass, all see-through, of course. We went in and were seated in the corner, right next to the glass. We sat there for about an hour and a half, eating, talking, and sipping on soda. Mark circled the restaurant the entire time, and we did our best to ignore him. Once we were finished, we got up to leave. Mark sped off, and we didn't see him again that evening. Some time passed, and Mark began riding by Elise's house every night. Within a week, he started doing the same to me. I told my parents and my stepfather, who kept a close eye on our street. My mom always made sure our doors and windows were locked, shades were shut, etc. Before going to bed, my dad would even do a nightly patrol, where he would drive around my street for a few minutes on his way home from work. Since he no longer lived there, he would call me and let me know that the coast was clear as he was leaving. I still woke up almost every night to the sound of his motorcycle engine revving up outside my house. We had no proof of this to show to the police because he was somehow doing this without a trace, so we didn't bother reporting it. At the end of 2017, Mark took his motorcycle and sped off to California to avoid the legal trouble he had gotten into there. Elise and I were relieved, to say the least. He still harassed us from time to time, but he never came back. We stopped hearing from him after a while, and we thought nothing of it. Fast forward one last time to September of 2019. Elise and I were out and about, enjoying the sunshine, when she got a phone call. Mark was dead. He had died right after his calls and messages to us had stopped. He got into it with his new drug dealer in Arizona and pissed them off enough for them to come and shoot him. He died instantly. He also caught more than 2 domestic violence charges in California and in Arizona, and was on the run from his warrant. His father told everyone it was an accidental overdose because Mark was known for abusing Xanax and other miscellaneous drugs, but it was to cover his sociopathic son's ass. I'm not sure if Mark's death was his karma or some higher being protecting us and all of the girls he's hurting before and would hurt in the future, but he's gone. We never have to worry about our safety because of him ever again, although seeing photos of him does still give me the creeps. Mark, I don't know where you are, but this world is better off without people like you. I am so glad you are gone. Let's never, ever meet again. During my sophomore year of college, I suddenly had to switch dorms due to housing and residence life at my university being completely assholes to me and a few other student workers. Long story short, I lost my job and had to move in within a day. My parents came 5 states away and made a huge fuss in the housing office, so I was able to get more moving time. This is important later in the story. I used to go on Instagram Live a lot because I am a music minor and practicing in front of an audience helps me improve my piano skills. I guess Instagram had begun offering the feature of showing stories lives on the Explore page, so I ended up getting a lot of views and comments from strangers. Nothing too bad. Usually just song requests that I couldn't fulfill because I had a strict repertoire of my piano professor, or hard eyes from strangers. I used to enjoy the lives until I got a comment from a man who knew the exact location of my university. I never wore any school attire during lives or publicized my location on Instagram, so it made me a little nervous. I stopped doing lives after that for a while, getting caught up in regular work. My major is a pre-law, and figured everything was fine. The guy sent me a few messages offering to take me on a date. A quick scan of his profile made it clear that he was at least 50 years old. I was a freshly 19 at the time and worked as a laborer for the city my university is located near. He asked me several times a day what building my classes were in, if I liked the cafeteria, etc., until I finally got scared and blocked him. Before I blocked him, however, I called him a pervert and a fucking weirdo for being interested in me when I was so much younger than him, and trying to find me while I was trying to go to class. A few weeks later, after I had forgotten about his weird messages, I got a message from him saying something along the lines of, "I waited for you in front of your old dorm for a few hours, but you never showed up. Did you go home for the weekend? You shouldn't be so rude to me next time, or else we won't have fun when we meet face to face." It scared me more than I'd ever been scared. My close friend graduated from the university and began working as a campus police officer around the same time, so I went to her to see what I could do. Sadly, not much could have been done, but I definitely pulled back on my social media presence. The guy followed me from 2 more Instagrams with different usernames, and I blocked them all before he could even message me. Thankfully, since leaving after that spring semester, I haven't heard from him or anyone else creepy. So, creepy old guy who thinks he knew where I live, let's not meet again. So this happened about 2 years ago, some days before Christmas. I live in Italy, and I'm Italian, so I'm not really good with English. Please be patient with me. As I was saying, this story happened 2 years ago, some days before Christmas. My boyfriend came visiting from Rome, and I went to the train station to pick him up. After that, we went shopping, and we walked around my city to spend some good time together. I didn't have a car, so to take him home, we had to use a bus. To get home, I usually have to travel something about 40 minutes. The ride takes really long and passes through some small towns in front of the sea. At a certain point, a guy gets on the bus and starts staring at us angrily. I wasn't sure why, and me and my boyfriend started looking at each other confused. Eventually, the guy looked for a seat that straight looked in front of us and started to talk to us about something we couldn't understand and kept staring at us as if we did something wrong. I was really scared because he kept looking towards us, so my boyfriend gave me a kiss to calm me down as he was looking at his phone to check some posts on Facebook. After that, the guy started to say out loud,
"Yes, you, pervert! Make me some photos while kissing your stupid girlfriend. I bet you gay."
Everyone started looking at the guy, and then us, and people were confused. But after that, the situation calmed down. Everyone must have thought that he was on drugs. We eventually got off the bus, and while we were getting off, the guy pushed my boyfriend, and we didn't see him for a while. But this is not the first and last time I met this guy. Every time I met him on the bus, he would get super mad if anyone got their smartphone in hand. And the second time I met him, he kicked my ankle and started to scream to point my phone screen towards him to check if I was making any photos, then proceeded to threaten me that if I ever got my phone out in his presence, he would shoot me in the head. In that situation, I was freaked out, but I kept my calm and started to tell him in a totally chill voice that I wasn't making any photos, and that if he would ever shoot me on the bus, he would have a hard time escaping without any witnesses. When he eventually got off while cursing and insulting me, the bus driver and everyone on the bus started asking if I was okay, if I wanted to call the police, but I remained calm and said that if I ever met him again, and if the same thing happened, I would have certainly done something. I met him many times again. He didn't do anything that made me call the cops on him. He just looked at me angrily as usual. I think about this person sometimes and wonder if something traumatic happened to him to make him so angry, or if he was on drugs, or if that person has problems that make him so upset. But hey, weird angry bus guy, Let's not meet again. I have a friend, a guy, who I knew in 2015 when I was 15 years old. He was 18, and he quickly became my best friend. So this friend from 2015 to mid-2016, I kept him close. And then I went to Canada. I started a new life at the university, and he has his own computer science university, and it's very sad, but we lost contact. But after everything is fine, right? With social networks, we can talk to each other at any time. So one day, 2016, I get an invitation from him, apart from the fact that he was not a fan of social networks like Facebook, and that his photos was not 100% like him, but a little bit. I'm just thinking he changed in 6 months. I haven't seen him. I can't really judge. So it is in 2016. Let's go back to the fact that I moved and that we lost contact in 2017. We talk a lot even if he is not really active on the networks, but what doesn't matter, I don't really monitor. Then until 2019 we don't talk anymore. Not for birthdays, for nothing. Sad, but that's life. A friend of mine advises me to contact him after all. He was important. We resume contact. The thing is, the previously mentioned friend became friends with him, and so Anne is now friends with him. The months go by, everything is fine, and the day I write this post, we are April 24, 2020, and I receive by dozens of messages from people I don't know and from him saying, "Send code, do not do the innocent." At the beginning, I tell myself this is hacking, but I keep getting messages over and over. I don't understand anything. I call my sister, then my friend in stress and in tears. My sister tries to reassure me. Then Anne keeps saying, "Sorry." I tell her it's not her fault. I'm just afraid. Finally, she tells me that she researched Facebook, and it turns out that it is not really him. It's him without being him. A false life has been created on social networks. Someone I've indulged in for years, who knows me well. That is to say, that I told him personal things. He may have used my photos on Facebook or whatever without really knowing it, and behind all that, it made me panic. I am not used to upheavals like that. I tried to confront him. He blocked me from all sides and deactivated. This guy was my friend without being one. I finally became friends with a stranger who was doing things definitely not clean on the internet, and I never realized it. I don't check Facebook friends lists. I don't check each other's likes. Knowing that I contacted him on a different means than Facebook, I knew that he was really the one behind that. I also knew that it was him because once he came once to Canada and I contact him like I leave class, we meet at 6 p.m. and it is he who is there at 6 p.m. shows that he has never been hacked. Something else, the photos he posted from his travels were taken from the net. How far the lie has gone. I don't know his family, just a few friends, that's all. It may not sound terrifying because he is not a criminal, or at least I think, but imagine for a second that your best friend created things on the internet for I don't know what reasons, and you got involved in it, and one of your friend outside of it, part of your world is falling apart. Maybe he used my photos, my personal message to him for years, etc. I do something with it. I don't know. I recently learned some chilling details about a person that was heavily involved in my life as a child, and I thought I would share the story. Throughout my childhood, I was extremely shy and did not find myself going out of my way to make friends in new settings. I had recently started preschool at my grandmother's church, and I remember being on the playground playing by myself when a woman introduced herself to me. Her name was Candy, and she looked like any other sweet old woman. She almost reminded me of my own grandmother, with her abundance of white curls on her head. Candy was a volunteer at the church and typically watched over the children while they played, so we could see each other fairly often. I can't remember much about the start of this friendship, but I presume one thing led to another before I was frequently spending time with her in and out of school. My parents were grateful to have someone who was interested in watching me, as I was the youngest of three and my parents worked full-time while also taking my brother and sister to and from school, sports, or to their friends' houses, so having a helping hand was a blessing for them. To be honest, I don't remember too many details about spending time with Candy, but I suppose we spent our time frequenting ice cream shops, parks, etc. I do have one memory of going to her house where I had never been before, and as she was showing me around, I remember passing through the dining room and seeing another girl who looked to be around 10 or 12 years old. Candy introduced me to her and told me that she lived down the street and would spend a lot of time at her house. I am not sure why, but I remember being jealous. I guess I was jealous that Candy also cared for and spent time with another little girl. I had never felt that way before, and I'm not sure why. I remember that so clearly. For some reason, that was the only time I went to her house. Fast forward a few years, and I am in first grade. I had totally forgotten about Candy and had not seen her since I graduated preschool. 2 years prior, my neighbors, who I carpooled to school with, had dropped me off at my house after school one day, and I spotted a Target grocery bag hooked to our front door. I wasn't sure what it could be or why my brother or sister didn't bring it inside when they arrived home from school an hour or so before me. Once I took a look inside, I noticed writing on the bag indicating that there was a gift inside for me from Candy. I ran up the stairs to my room, and to my surprise, there were several adorable, brand new outfits inside just for me. I immediately tried them on and was so excited to show my mom when she came home from work. After my mom got home, I eagerly showed her the outfits that Candy had left for me. Unfortunately, my mom was not as excited as I was. In fact, she was quite angry. She yelled at me to take them off, that she would be returning them to Candy. I was so confused as to why she was upset with me. What did I do wrong? These were free clothes, a gift. Wouldn't it be rude to return a gift to someone? To avoid being punished, I put the clothes back in the bag and handed them to my mother. We never spoke of this again, and Candy slipped my mind for the next several years. A few years ago, my sister was home visiting from college, with nothing else to do. We decided to go to Target to shop for useless things we didn't need. As we were walking through the parking lot, the thought of the Target bag from Candy randomly dawned on me. I proceeded to laugh and ask my sister if she remembered, and if she knew why my mom was in such an awful mood that day to force me to give the clothes back to Candy. My sister stopped dead in her tracks and said, "Wait, do you not remember what Candy did to us?" Taken aback, I shook my head and begged her to tell me what had happened. She refused to talk about it and told me to ask my mom. Once again, the thought of Candy slipped to my mind, and I didn't remember to ask my mother about what happened until I was in college a few years later. We were saying goodbye to my grandmother after grabbing lunch when she mentioned to my mom that someone's funeral was that weekend. They then sat in silence for a few minutes, just staring at each other. After my grandma left, I asked my mom who they were talking about, and she informed me about Candy's death. The realization that I had never heard the true stories about this woman crossed my mind, and I asked my mom about what my sister refused to speak on. My mother proceeded to relay the horrible stories to me about the little old woman that tried to take me away from my family and was someone that they trusted. However, Candy's intentions were questioned by my grandmother, who shared a few of her concerns with my father. After hearing some odd stories from her at church, she felt as though something was off with Candy, and she didn't like that I spent so much time with her, coming from a woman who never had a negative thing to say about anyone. My father became slightly weary of Candy, but he assumed that my grandmother was just being overly cautious. After some time of Candy watching over and babysitting me, her demeanor changed, and she started acting possessive of me. She would show up unannounced to our house asking for me, and if I wasn't there, she would become incredibly angry and yell at my parents about how awful they were. She would continuously tell them that they didn't deserve me, and only she was worthy of taking care of me. This happened several times before my parents told her to stop coming to the house, or they would call the police. This inclined her to start calling the house and leave messages for me, which my parents obviously would not tell me about. In these voicemails, she would cry to me and try to convince me to leave with her and leave my family. She would talk about how awful my parents were and how she could give me a much better life than they could. The voicemails that were intended for me soon turned to threats for my parents. She threatened to call the police or child services to have me removed from the home and placed into her care. She threatened to tell the police about my parents' violence and abuse towards me and my siblings, none of which was true. Once she realized her phone calls were not working, she began making efforts to show up at the house again. She started by driving up and down our street day after day. She would ask our neighbors and then the neighbors' children if anyone knew if I was home or where I was. She would park her car and watch our house without anyone really noticing or saying anything. Eventually, our neighbors began recognizing her car and what was going on, and they would inform my parents when she came around asking about me. After some time of doing this, she took it upon herself to come to the front door while my brother, who was likely only 12 years old at the time, and I were home, and she started banging on the door, begging to see me. My brother opened one of the front doors, keeping the storm door between them closed, and told her to leave. She proceeded to plead with him to let her in, and he replied that I was not home, despite me napping soundly upstairs. Cheers for smart 12-year-old brothers. Candy partially forced herself through the door when my brother put his hand in her face, pushing her out the door, and told her that the police had been called. She left after that and distanced herself for a while before she encountered in the final straw with my brother. One day, my mother and I were backing out of the driveway to attend a birthday party. When Candy pulled in behind our car, blocking us from leaving, she came up to the window, and my mother rolled it down, ready to tell her off for good. Candy ignored her and looked right past my mother into the back seat where I was sitting. She said,
"Would you rather come with me and never see your mom again? I love you so much more than they ever did. I can give you everything you want if you come with me."
That was the final straw for my mother. She never thought that she would be upset or fight with an old woman, but the day had come when it was absolutely necessary. She screamed and yelled at her, making sure to include that Candy would regret the day that she never came into contact with me or my family again. Something she said must have actually scared Candy, because she drove off and didn't appear in our lives again until the Target bag incident. I'm not sure how I never knew that any of this happened and never thought anything was weird about her when I was a child, but I guess my parents did a good job of shielding me from the horrors of that situation. After hearing about everything that took place, I assumed that there must have been a reason she became so obsessed with me. Did she not have her own family? Did she lose children or grandchildren and wanted to find someone to fill the void? According to my mother, she had several children that were much older than me, as well as young grandchildren. Thus, I'm not sure what would have sparked her interest in me, but thankfully, we no longer have to worry about her. Part of me still wonders if I repressed any memories or conversations with her that were upsetting. Did she ever privately talk to me about how awful my parents were, or how she wanted to take me away from my family? Did I ever agree to leave with her? I also wonder if, as I grew older and joined social media like Facebook, did she ever search my name? Did she ever watch me when I was in middle school, high school, or even when I went away for college? I have so many questions, but I'm glad that we never had to find out. If she was going to follow through with any of her threats, as a word of advice, always trust your grandmother's instincts about another grandmother, and do not befriend the old woman volunteering on the playground. And finally, to the woman who made my parents' lives a living hell, let's not meet again.
So, I've just gotten out of a pretty significant relationship with someone of 4 years, nearly engaged, and moving in together, etc. When things fell apart, I took a good amount of time to be on my own and get my shit together again. When my friends began encouraging me to get back out there, needless to say, I really wasn't wanting anything at that point, nor looking for anything. But they insisted that I at least just go out on a few casual dates for practice, just to kind of get my skills back up for when I was ready. I think they were honestly just worried because I had become quite hermetic. So I matched with this girl who's home from college for the summer. She's a little out of the way from me, but was eager to meet, seemed really interesting, was even willing to come to my area, etc. I really wasn't all that interested, to be truthful, but my friends again encouraged this, practice, whatever the fuck that means. A date doesn't mean commitment, whatever. I want to be clear, though, that I was extremely honest and explicit with her that I was not looking for anything serious or anything really at all. I was very forthcoming that I had gotten out of something serious, and I was just kind of encouraged to explore. She persisted and still wanted to meet, so we agreed to a casual lunch in a sports bar that week. I get there, and she was already waiting for me. I was a bit put off by how much different she looked than her pictures. Not trying to sound shallow or anything, but her pics from Tinder easily had to be at least 5 years old, which I verified based on tattoos she had in person versus ones she didn't in pics. So I was a bit thrown off by that. I wasn't the least bit attracted to her, but I was there to just have new experiences anyway, right? No big deal. I felt bad because the entire time she seemed so incredibly shy and awkward. I even noticed her hand shaking when she reached for her glasses, which I found endearing, honestly. So I did my best to get her talking and try to help her feel more relaxed. I asked her questions and chatted about things I figured you chat about on dates. Where she grew up, music she's into, school she goes to, major, etc. All to which I literally received one-word answers. It went on like this for about an hour, and she was just not working with me at all. But I tried to keep room in my heart because it was clear she was feeling anxious, and I understood that on a personal level. Then she pulls out this book and says, "I got this for you." And I responded very grateful, thanking her and inquiring what it was about. 'Cause hey, if someone wants to share a good read with me, I'm all for that. She looks at me funny and says in a very sudden but odd tone, "You're kidding, right?" I'm very confused and just kind of look at her like, "Huh?" And she says, "This is your favorite book. You told me this was your favorite book." To which I said, no? I have never even heard of this before. So we concluded
that she ultimately got me confused with someone else she must have been chatting with, which I honestly found hilarious. She was embarrassed, but I made light of it and said I found it funny, 'cause I get it. That's Tinder culture, I guess. So as we finished lunch, and I'm still receiving one-word answers despite our funny moment, I kinda become a bit suggestive that we should conclude our date by saying I had to get back to feeding my animals and do some laundries, etc. But she became very adamant on spending more time and asked if we could go do something else. I was genuinely trying to be a decent person, so I agreed, and we found a nearby park to walk. That's where shit gets weird. We sit on a park bench. Mind you, it's broad daylight. There's kids playing basketball nearby, folks jogging by. I start trying to make conversation yet again, but still get the one-word answers. Then, out of seemingly nowhere, without any warning whatsoever, she proceeds to just kiss me really aggressively, tongue and everything. I was honestly just so shocked I stood there frozen, not knowing what the fuck to do. I had this timid, shy woman who's really not made conversation with me at all, who was so nervous she visibly was shaking, just turned into a frickin' bear mauling my face in like 6 seconds. My head was spinning with confusion and anxiety, and I swear it felt like it lasted forever, and I just prayed for it to stop. I was so put off and honestly a bit afraid to do or say anything. Like, what do you even do in this situation? I was just hoping that she'd pick up on my very obvious body language, that I wasn't reciprocating anything at all. I was completely unprepared for a situation like this. Then, some really nasty guy walks by gawking and catcalling, and literally begins propositioning us into a three-way, and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? I need to get out of here. I was 1,000 different types of uncomfortable. I ended up managing to ward him off after telling him very politely no, more than several times. All the while she's just laughing, and I'm thinking, who even are you? Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde over here? What the fuck? So he leaves, and I'm insisting now that I need to leave and go home. She seems to ignore whatever I'm saying, and gets very close to my face again and says, "Did you like that? Do you think I'm sexy? Do you want me?" When I tell you I was so fucking nervous, I was like, I really need to get home. And she was just like, "Can I come?" And I told her very firmly, no. She literally tried to persuade me to let her come back to my place with me, and I had to say no more than once, like 3 times. So finally I'm home, and frankly, just kind of shaken up. I hadn't really done the dating thing in quite a long time, but that felt very abnormal. She then texts me after she gets home and asked me out on a second date, and I was very kind despite being made incredibly uncomfortable. And I told her that I thought that she was a very cool chick and I had a nice time. Lie. But that I did not feel anything there, and reminded her I wasn't looking for anything. She then text bombed me a bunch of crazy shit, saying how she didn't understand and was so confused, that she thought I was so into her and that things went great. I did not respond to any of these because now she's continuing to cross my boundaries. I said what I needed to say, and I thought I was being decent by at least being honest. So the text continued, and I figured they were going to stop eventually because it was a first date. How can someone be so upset over someone not reciprocating on a first date? They did not stop. By reading the text, you would have probably thought that we just ended a 2-year relationship. Then she began calling, at which point I had to block her number. So Nightmare Tender Girl, please, for the love of everything, let's never, ever meet again. I was 21, recently became a police officer, and was also recently dumped, so my friend suggested Tinder. As a 21-year-old and a new cop, I had the I'm invincible and I can take on anyone mentality. I matched up with a very good-looking, out-of-my-league female. We chatted and eventually set up a date to meet. She said she had a great open field to look at the stars and hang out, and we could meet up at her house. So the night came, I was excited, and she seemed to be excited when I picked her up. She guided me to the field, and it looked nice. Open space, woods, deer, and other wildlife. In the field, I noticed really dim headlights in the distance. Then the van started driving towards us and pulled up in front of us, almost close enough to block me from going forward. I told her to stay in the car, and I'll go say hi. I grabbed my flashlight I had in the car and walked up. In the front driver's seat of the van, there was a decently sized man. I asked him what's going on and if he could back his car up a little bit. He was very polite and said he was the owner of the property and said he didn't mean to scare us. He told me he's been having trouble with poachers on his property and just wanted to make sure we weren't going to be shooting anything. I assured him we only came here to look at some stars and wildlife. He was perfectly okay with that, told me to have a nice date, and drove away. After that, the girl was texting nonstop. Around an hour later, I saw headlights coming towards us again, this time at a really fast pace. We hopped in the car, and I moved to a more defensive position. The same man came close enough to almost hit my car. She hopped out of the car at that point and ran towards the guy. I immediately knew that I was fucked. I got out and gave them commands to back up and get on the ground. Neither of them complied. Obviously, he then proceeded to charge me and knock me to the ground. Luckily, I was able to get him on his back and get up. I saw my date grab a metal pipe from the van. She told me that she had a gun and to give me my money and my truck, and I would not get hurt. Of course, with my I'm invincible mentality, I said no. She started to cry and saying they didn't want to hurt me. When they started to go back towards the car at that point, I told them I was a cop, drew my concealed firearm, and told them to lay down on the ground. After a moment of shock from one of us, they complied. I was able to call 911, tell them my name and my badge number. I had two at gunpoint and needed to back up immediately. I gave my dispatcher the best directions I could to this field while on the phone. They both fled. Again, stupid, new cop, young guy mentality. I chased them. I took off after the man. We ran into the woods around the field. I chased him for maybe 30 seconds and heard 3 loud pops and saw muzzle flash. My invincible mentality went right out the window. I ran like hell back to my car and peeled the hell out of there. I went back to the area I picked her up in, called dispatch again, and had officers come to that location. Of course, the first officers to pull up was my sergeant and my field training officer. Of course, they were both completely understanding and did not give me any shit about it at all. The most words that they used was dumbass and stupid fucking rookie. I hopped in their car and went towards the field. Luckily, the van was still there. They told me to shut my goddamn mouth and only come out if I heard gunshots. They cleared the area and started looking in the van. They found meth right there on the center console and searched the car. What scared me the most was when my field training officer and sergeant came back to the patrol car, let me out, and told me to come look in the back of the van. Both of them were pale, looked horrified. I went to the back of the van where there were several knives, duct tape, lighter fluid, a decent amount of rifle ammunition, handcuffs, and what looked like dried blood, and the front seat passenger side. We found an AR-15 style rifle and 2 more handguns. We called for immediate backup and detectives. We then investigated the blood. It turned out it wasn't blood. The plates had been stolen and the van was reported as stolen. I still get a lot of shit about the whole encounter, but luckily no one got hurt. I will never use online dating ever again. This was 3 years ago, and I started college down the country. I was 18 and on Tinder. I never actually met anyone off of it, but I would just swipe through guys just to be nosy and see who was on it. I was swiping right on some, and about an hour after, got a message off this guy, who, according to his account, was about 20 kilometers away. We made some small talk. It was awkward, and I stopped replying. A day later, I got a friend request off of him on Facebook. Mind you, I have a common enough name, so it would have took ages for him to have found me. We have no mutual friends, and my Tinder photos is not on my Facebook account. The only thing I had on it was the university I was attending, so maybe that's how he found me, but I don't know. I then quickly got a follow request on Instagram, and he somehow found my Snapchat username. I don't have it on my social media, and it is a variation of my full name with extra added in vowels and an underscore. I was freaking out at this point. I messaged him asking him how he found out my full name, and he just replied with, "I think we have a connection. I really want to get to know you better." I unmatched him, deleted my Tinder, and blocked the accounts he tried to add me on all social media. After that, it was quiet for a few months. I was staying in digs and was knuckling down as I had a lot of assignments from the get-go. This was towards the end of November. I had no assignments due for 2 weeks, so I decided to go out with some friends. One of my friends stayed in student accommodation, and the other was commuting, so she was staying with the other friend. I decided to walk back to my digs, as my landlady would probably freak out if I wasn't home that morning, and I really wish I got a taxi instead. My walk back was about 15 minutes from the local nightclub where we were at. It was about 3 a.m. at this point. I was at the front door of the house opening up. The door was annoying as it had been 2 different locks, and I had to pull the handle towards myself to open it up. It's also tough when you're tipsy and trying not to wake up the family you're staying with. Anyway, as I finally unlock the door, a dark car pulls into the housing estate I'm staying in. It's quite big and has a big green area in the middle for children or people to play with their dogs. The car comes towards me, so I quickly get inside and lock the door. The car pulls into the driveway of the house I'm staying in and just sits there with the full headlights on. I'm there shaking and too afraid to move from crouched below the door, as there's frosted glass about halfway up. As I get the courage to go upstairs to look out my bedroom window to see who it is, the car pulls out of the driveway and speeds away. A few days later, I get a new friend request off the creepy Tinder guy on my new Facebook profile, as there was no photos on this account, just the same name, blocked. It was enough that it caused me to transfer universities the following year. Thankfully, I haven't heard anything since. I don't know if it was just bad timing, or if it was that creepy guy on Tinder that sat in the driveway, but it was petrifying. If you take anything from this, be careful who you let in your social media or dating apps and what information you have up. I am going to warn you, the story is a bit long and quite a doozy. Grab some popcorn and perk up those ears. This happened about 6 years ago. I'm 27 now. Having said that, I apologize if there are some details missing, or that I don't remember. I'd gotten out of a 3-year relationship that didn't end particularly well. I did not want to be one of those girls that made her way through a friend group, if you catch my drift. I wanted a change of scenery. I decided that I would try my luck on a dating site called Tinder. I know, terrible idea. I'm well aware of that now, but hindsight is always 20/20. In my mind, most of the dating sites are a cesspool of incels, catfish, and desperate people. To my surprise, I actually went on several decent sites. No red flags, creeper vibes, or weird feelings. Luckily, I made my mom aware of what I was doing, so whenever I'd go on a date, she'd know where I was and when I was going to be home. Mama didn't raise no idiot, right? Wrong. This is when I came across Dennis's profile. He seemed chill, kinda cute, and somewhat interesting, so I sent him a message. He was playful and had a sarcastic sense of humor, right up my alley. I decided to give him a shot. We met at a coffee shop and had some very engaging and interesting conversations. Dennis was 5'9", normal build, balding with a reddish hair, and glasses. He definitely gave off some nerd vibes. He started off by asking, "What are you looking for?" I gave my normal response, "I'm wanting someone who is sweet and caring, but also funny and intelligent." Something along those lines. Nothing groundbreaking. Cut me some slack. I was young. I realized later that giving this sort of response was the beginning of the end. Dennis and I went on a couple of more dates that were unmemorable. I started to fall head over heels for this guy, and fast. He was sweet, understanding, caring, empathetic. He liked to work out and took care of himself. He was everything I ever wanted in a guy. It was difficult to understand why he was single, since I was falling for him so quickly. We agreed that we would be exclusive. Everything was going smoothly until about 2 months into our relationship. That's when shit started to hit the fan. For the last month, I had been pushing him to let me hang out at his place and to meet his roommate, from the suggestion of my parents, because they are smart people. Every time I'd push the subject, he'd always make up some excuse on why we can't. My roommate is crazy. It's not a good time for me. He works opposite schedules than me, etc. It was always something. At some point, we had made plans to go out to a club one evening. I was all dressed and ready to go, waiting on him. He ended up not answering his phone for a couple of hours. I realized his phone must have died, since whenever I would send him messages, it would never say delivered. For those of you who are Apple users, I ended up deciding to go to his place to see if he would answer his door. I obtained his address at some point. I don't remember how. He lived about 15 minutes away from me in an apartment complex, and it was the middle of winter, February. It was fucking cold. I knocked on his door, no answer. While heading back to my car, look who decided to show up. None other than Dennis himself. And guess who he was with? Yes, you are correct. Another fucking woman. Which I later found was his long-term girlfriend, Jessica. I quickly made my way over to him. The look on his face was fucking priceless. His face deadpanned as soon as he saw me. He whispered something to the girl he was with, and she made her way inside. He came over to me and was speechless at first. I am very surprised to see you here. Really? We had plans, remember? I wanted to see if you were home. Yeah, I don't remember. My phone died, so I didn't receive any of your texts, and I lost track of time. We were at a friend's birthday party. Who's the girl? Oh, she's my roommate. I thought the guy was your roommate. He was. She's my other roommate, and a very good friend. Mind you, I'm a very skeptical person, and alarm bells were definitely going off in my mind. In accordance with my parents' numerous warnings. However, Dennis is the sort of person who is very good at talking himself out of situations. His reasoning behind the decisions he makes, why he made them, etc. He was an excellent liar, and being the naive, insecure person I was, I believed him. We ended up going to the club after I waited for him outside in my car for almost an hour. I didn't think about it too much, since I was getting what I wanted and nothing was said about his girl roommate. Over the next month, I kept pushing Dennis to meet his family and his guy roommate. He eventually caved and brought me to see his mother. It was an extremely odd experience. We talked about books, and some of Dennis's friends and I made snide remarks about how Dennis's guy roommate was fucking nuts. Dennis's words. And they gave me the strangest glances. This would make more sense to me in about a month or so. Eventually I started to realize that Dennis's stories weren't adding up, and I started to see holes in his stories. He would only see me on Tuesday and Thursday evenings because he worked a lot of overtime. He would never be flexible or change his mind or even allow me to attempt to change his mind. If he was late coming to see me, which started to happen pretty frequently, he would send me screenshots of his work and his work vehicle and line waiting to get washed, or he would send me screenshots of his bathroom saying he just wanted to freshen up. When I would ask for a picture of him in that moment of him in his bathroom mirror, he declined. He refused to send any pictures of himself, proving that he was where he claimed to be. He would also take unusually long bathroom breaks at my house after sex. I saying like 20 or more minutes long breaks. I know, another huge alarm bell. Everything came to a head about a month or so later. I told Dennis that I wanted us to go somewhere with no phone service so that we could truly spend time together without technology being a distraction. He agreed. We ended up making plans to spend 2 to 3 days in Canada. It was still early in our relationship, 4 months, and my mom wanted to make sure I was safe, so she took down Dennis's driver's license and made a copy of it, as well as his license plate. Thank you, Mom. The trip ended up relatively uneventful until the last evening in the hotel room. I'm not sure if it was on purpose or if he was actually asleep. Dennis ended up rolling over to my side, pulling me in close and saying, "I love you, Jessica." That made my blood run cold. I was so upset. Tears started to blur my vision. As I got up out of the bed, my parents were right all along. He was a liar and a cheat. Did I break it off? No, of course not. That would make sense. Why? I was naive and desperately in love with him. I also didn't want to admit it to myself that I had been played or that I was the side chick. So I acted as if nothing was wrong, and I didn't even hear what he said that night. Of course, it didn't get rid of the aching feeling that I had for several weeks. I began to have bad anxiety and panic attacks on my way to school because of the bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. Dennis was constantly lying to me, and I mean constant. It was so bad that I ended up starting to feel angry. I let that feeling simmer for a couple of days until I decided to do something about it. When realizing that you were right all along and things weren't just a strange coincidence, it's very bittersweet. On a freezing March day, after an exhausting day at school, I wanted to get rid of the nagging feeling in the back of my head once and for all. I decided to head for Dennis's apartment complex to see if he was still lying to me about living in the apartments with this girl roommate. I got out of my car. I was shaking. I didn't know it was from anxiety or from anger that was starting to bubble below the surface. Was he lying about this girl roommate? You bet your sweet ass he was. I knocked on his door and hid myself from view of the peephole. He answered the door with his girl roommate behind him. I came from around the corner to look at him with an emotionless face and said, "Wow." I turned on my heels and walked away, only to find out as I get back to my car that I locked myself out of my car on a cold March day in the middle of winter. I was so distracted by my rage and sadness that I didn't realize I left both my keys and my phone in my car. I'm such an idiot. I was beside myself. I didn't know what to do. I locked my phone in my car along with my keys. How the fuck can you do that? I was so angry at myself for being a fucking moron. Not only that, I was in the parking lot of my cheating ex-boyfriend's apartment complex. I wish I was making this up. I really do. With nothing else to lose, literally, I walked back to Dennis's apartment and knocked on their door. Jessica answers, and I beg to use their phone to call AAA. Jessica surprisingly agrees and let me use her phone. This entire time, Dennis is agitated and kept walking around after I got off the phone with AAA. At one point, he even went outside with a coat hanger in an attempt to unlock my door, but to no avail. During that time, I took advantage of me being alone with Jessica to get some information out of her, like how long they had been together, where did they meet. I felt as though I was an auctioneer. I was shooting 20 questions at her rapid fire before Dennis came back in. By the end of it, I had more than enough information to prove that Dennis was not who he says he was. Everything started to make sense, and puzzle pieces began connecting. One of the biggest aha moments for me was when we both were talking about being in a relationship with him on Facebook. It turns out this sly motherfucker created 2 different Facebook accounts to ensure he was in a relationship with us both, only to block the other girl on that account, guaranteeing that neither of us would come across each other or his other Facebook account. I remember, in the beginning, I commented on how his Facebook profile was super limited and didn't have anything on it. He claimed it was only because he used Facebook to befriend coworkers on it and didn't use it much. Anyway, near the end of our conversation, I tried convincing Jessica that Dennis was a pathological liar and didn't care about her. It was at this point I realized that Jessica could have been aware of everything that Dennis was doing and was in on it, or she was just that naive. I tried texting her after I had left their apartment to try and talk some more sense into her, but it was useless. Dennis was with her alone, and he was master at skewing and spinning stories. Unfortunately for him, I had no more trick up my sleeve. Over the course of the next week, I spent my remaining few free hours I had, if I wasn't studying or working, gathering evidence against Dennis. I did research on Dennis and Jessica through Google, but mostly Facebook. This is the scary part about Facebook. If you don't have your privacy settings on lock, I found out who Jessica's parents were and decided to send them a message through Facebook with all the evidence I have collected over the past week and a half against Dennis, ensuring that they would believe me and my story. And when I say evidence, I mean photos of him and I, screenshots of conversations we had through text, pictures of him and I, etc. All of these pictures, text, conversations having timestamps to show that he was seeing me at the same time he was seeing Jessica, hoping that they wouldn't write me off as some crazy ex-girlfriend or psycho bitch. Wishful thinking, am I right? I thought that there was something you should know. Your daughter is being lied to by her current boyfriend, Dennis. I met him on an online dating site, Tinder, and we spent the last 5 months together, but Dennis ended up lying to me about his life and everything about it. I doubt your daughter knows the extent to which she has been lied to. I feel it is only right for me to share this information I have collected with you, so that it might be brought to your daughter's attention, and so he can no longer get away with this type of behavior. Dennis is not who he says he is, or appears to be, and he has lied about many aspects of his life. Let me explain. As I stated previously, I met Dennis on Tinder, an online dating site. We dated for 5 months until I found out that he lied to me about his living conditions and the fact that he also has another girlfriend, your daughter. I have several pictures showing that Dennis and I were together as a couple. He also has several Facebook accounts. One he called a work Facebook, in which he was in a relationship with me, and another account in which he was in a relationship with your daughter. His work Facebook account no longer exists since he deleted it, but I was able to take pictures of it before it was deleted to prove what I am saying. Before continuing, I should mention that I have met your daughter twice. The first time was very brief, and Dennis told me that she was only a good friend. They had just gotten back from hanging out with some friends at Dave and Buster's house for his birthday party. This was back in early January. The second time meeting your daughter was for a longer period of time. This was at the beginning of March. I ended up going to Dennis's apartment to see if he was lying to me about still living at the apartment. He was. I ended up knocking on their door to find Dennis answer it and see your daughter standing behind him. Jessica mentioned to me about how she and Dennis have been dating for almost 4 years. I was also made aware of another Jessica he dated not too long before he started dating me. Jessica has also sent me text messages mentioning that there may be a possibility of him seeing another woman aside from your daughter and Jessica, a different Jessica. I will attach separate files with all of these photos I have collected. They will be in the order in which they are mentioned in this letter to you. I hope this information is of use to you, and I hope I was able to help in providing that Dennis is not who he says he is, and for you not to be fooled like I was. Thank you very much for your time. I did end up receiving a reply from her mother the following morning. The last time I heard from Dennis was a message he decided to leave in the grass in my backyard. It was a dead rabbit with its head cleanly cut from its body. It was clear that a human did it, since there were no sign of blood and the head was cleanly cut off. My family and I reported it to the police in case any escalation happened. Luckily, nothing did. Unfortunately, Dennis was smart enough not to take it any further, but it was clear he was very angry. He didn't want to leave any sort of trail through the internet or paper implying what he had did. Dennis, fuck you, fuck your empty apology. I feel sorry that Jessica had to deal with your dumb ass as long as she did. You were only sad that you got caught. I hope karma plants you right on your ass. To all the ladies he has messed with, I hope you're okay, and that he hasn't dashed too much of your confidence. He's a lowlife, and that's all he'll ever be. Thank you for listening. Take care, friends, and be careful. About 2 years ago, today, I recently moved to a new city in Canada. I was 21 at the time and single, as I just got out of a shitty relationship, so moving was a fresh start for me. In a new city, where nobody knew really, except my one guy friend, who we will call Mike. Mike didn't live directly in the city though, but we hung out a lot. Since I was single in a new city, I downloaded Tinder. Everyone my age has this dating app, or hookup app really. I don't usually do dating apps, but I was bored and was looking for a little fun. Remember the I don't do dating apps thing once you reach the end of this story. This is the exact reason I don't ever go on them anymore. So, I get on there and I match with a guy, who we will call Andrew. So I didn't message him first or anything, because I was doing a lot of swiping, and honestly went on with my day doing other things, as I just moved and needed to unpack. So a couple of hours later I check my phone, and I see Andrew has messaged me several times saying hi, complimenting me, and he even sent a funny pickup line. I always appreciate a good pickup line, as I have a good sense of humor about mostly everything, and don't take many things that seriously. Keep this in mind too. So I replied, and we got to chatting. He eventually asked for my number, so I gave it to him. It was fine from there, really. Nothing weird was said, so he asked me out to dinner and a few drinks. I agreed, and we met 3 days later. We met in a public place, obviously. I saw him outside the restaurant leaning on his car. It was a really nice car. He asked me to take a photo of it with the sun setting in the background. I said okay, sure. Thought it was random, but whatever. We go inside and eat dinner and drink a little bit, and it was a really good date. So I invited him back to my apartment to keep the night going, I guess you could say. It wasn't super late, and we were really hitting it off. We get to my door, and I was a little bit tipsy, as I drank 3 glasses of wine. I wasn't drunk, though, but I kept forgetting my code to my door. So I had it on my phone, and I got us in. The rest of the night wasn't weird at all. I woke up beside him the next morning, majorly hungover, and we obviously had fun the night before. He left, and all was good. I really didn't want to pursue anything further, so I texted him and said, "Last night was great, but I'm not looking for anything serious right now." And he freaked out on me saying, I was wrong for leading him on, and whatever else was said. Okay, fine, fair. You can have your opinions. That's by all means fine. So I ghosted him. Just didn't really feel like talking anymore after that. As he said degrading and subjective things, I left it at that and moved on with my life, as we all would. About a week goes by, and I'm out running errands to finish the last details of getting my apartment furnished. I come home, and he's sitting in my living room with flowers and a bottle of wine. I was drinking at dinner. I was immediately like, how did you get in here? As you need a key fob, and obviously a door code. The door code thing, after I thought about it, did not surprise me. He remembered it as I had it in and out in my open phone. But the key fob I was confused about, how he got the extra one I have. He admitted to taking it when I was asleep, when he stayed the night. I was really mad someone would do that after not knowing someone for like 16 hours in person, so I kicked him out, and I was a little shooken up about the situation. I blocked his number immediately after he kept apologizing. I just couldn't forgive him after doing that and invading my home, which is a safe space. Fast forward again to 2 weeks later, I was on a little getaway in Seattle with my friend Mike. I posted Instagram stories on the trip, and I forgot until after he followed me. We matched on Tinder. This is a common thing guys my age do on Tinder. So he knew I was gone for a weekend. Mike and I are coming back to my place to drop bags off and chill for a little bit at the apartment. I walk into my apartment with Mike this time, and Andrew was on my couch with a girl. I was completely in shock he got in again. The girl even had the audacity to say, "Who are you and why are you in Andrew's apartment?" I lost my mind on both of them and asked him how in the fuck he got in again. He had no made-up story this time. He just flat out didn't know what to say except, "I didn't know when you'd be back, so I've been staying here with this bitch." Mike was mad as fuck about the situation, as I told him all about it weeks ago. I demanded to know how he got into my apartment again. He said he made multiple copies of the key fob after he took it. My heart completely sank, and I threatened to call the cops if they did not get out of my apartment, and gave me every fob he copied. I was pissed and felt so invaded of my space. About a month goes by, and I was still thinking about it every once in a while. He was blocked on every social media I could find him on. I thought he was gone until I randomly saw him places, more and more frequently, like it wasn't a one-time thing. I saw him at least 7 times, and I was in public every single time. The last time, however, I was walking the seawall alone, and it was getting kinda late and dark out. It was about 9 p.m. in the beginning of June, and I stopped to tie my shoe, and when I stood up, he was right there. I fucking panicked because I genuinely felt threatened by him at this point. He kept asking why I ghosted him and didn't accept him coming around anymore, and how I could be so mean to someone who he was so into. He kept trying to grab my arm to talk to me and started yelling. I was in tears because his next moves I had no idea about. Someone thankfully heard and intervened. I told them I was not okay, and they called the cops. He obviously ran, and the police asked me to identify him. I gave them his name, and they couldn't find anyone with that name. So now it felt like me wondering if that was even his name. I remembered I had a picture of his license plate in my phone. He had a nice car and wanted me to take a picture of it with my phone as the sun was setting behind him. Douchey, I know. So I gave them that information, and they told me the plates weren't even registered. So now, I'm mind blown by the whole thing and very confused, even a little worried. They couldn't do a whole lot with what I provided, but they said they would update me if they find anything, and to contact them if he gets into my apartment again or if I saw him out. I never did, thankfully, but to this day I'm always looking over my shoulder for that stalker. I have since then moved and haven't seen him again, so to the guy who broke into my apartment on more than one occasion, let's not meet again.